Yeah, let's start this Thursday edition of the SportsMax Zone with cricket. One of the modern game's most intense rivalries will snatch the focus of the cricketing world starting later on Thursday in Perth, Australia. And India will clash down under in a 5-match test series for the Border-Gavaskar trophy. The hosts have gone for an experienced unit led by Pat Cummins for the first encounter, but have included one uncapped player in 25-year-old Queensland-born off-spinning all-rounder Nathan McSweeney, who will open the batting, ending the Steve Smith experiment. Meanwhile, 37-year-old captain Rohit Sharma will miss the first test, and Jasprit Bumrah will stand in to lead an equally strong India side, which includes Virat Kohli, an uncapped top-order batsman Abhiman Iswaran. The Indians will also miss the services of Mohammad Shami. All right, time to get the thoughts then of the captain, Fazir Mohammed, the SportsMax captain, that is. Faz, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. How are you doing this afternoon?
Not too bad at all. I'm glad you differentiated that I'm nowhere near being anything resembling a captain in proper cricket, just in talking about it, hopefully with some semblance of sense. But yes, there is a tremendous level of anticipation, because I think when you look back to the corresponding series 4 years ago, which was just 4 matches in the midst of COVID, when everyone was at home and probably enjoying the late nights, they really enjoyed an intriguing, enthralling, absorbing series that had everything in it. And if it produces anything like that, we could really be in for a classic 5-test series.
Yeah, so much has been said in the build-up to this series, and I really did take note of the comments made by the former England captain Michael Vaughan. And yeah, let's have a look at those comments from Vaughan, just speaking about the series, the rivalry, India versus Australia, and where it stands in the global cricketing space. And he says, there has been some talk out here and in India that this is now cricket's greatest rivalry. I disagree. Nothing comes close to the Ashes for the history and heritage. Across almost 150 years, the rivalry and hostility between England and Australia runs so deep. Faz, your comments to this from Michael Vaughan.
Well, he's right on history and heritage. It's obvious. I mean, but basically Michael is barking up the wrong tree, because the reference is that this being the premier test series contest right now. Yes, there's the Ashes, and occasionally there'll be a great Ashes series, especially in England. But if you look at Ashes series in Australia, with the exception of 2010, 2011, over the last 30 years, they've all been pretty one-sided. Yes, they have the history going back to 1877. No one can question that. India only came onto the scene in 1932, and it's only within the last 30 years, and especially the last 20, that they've been even more competitive in Australia. So yes, history, heritage, all of that belongs to the Ashes. But the point that is being made by those arguing for the premier status for this series doesn't have much to do with history and tradition, has to do with the quality of the cricket, the intensity of the rivalry now. So I think in this case, it's just a case of the former England captain taking offense to someone suggesting that it may be on par with the Ashes series. Well, I could tell you, I could recall on my first trip to Australia in 1996-97, the respected Australian journalist, one of them was telling me that he considers Australia versus West Indies, certainly of the previous 20 years, as above the Ashes as far as the quality of the cricket. So again, the point is not so much about the history and the tradition. That is standard when it comes to the Ashes, but it's about the quality of the contest, which is, I think, where Michael Vaughan missed the point.
Yeah, beautifully put, fans. And just one more quickly. Australia last played a test match in March. India coming off that unprecedented 3-0 whitewash against New Zealand. India, the issues with Rohit Sharma not starting this first test. And so much in the build-up. Based on everything that's happening, Faz, who starts favourites in your mind?
Well, if you want to go by what happened 4 years ago, you'd have to say India. Even if they were to lose this test match, based on what happened then when they lost so many key players. They, again, for this one, no Rohit Sharma, Jasprit Bumrah is the captain, Virat Kohli looks out of touch, quite a few relatively new faces, even though they would have played 1 or 2 test matches, Dhruv Jurel and a few other names coming into the mix. So it's a situation where on the face of it, it looks as if Australia should start favourites because especially it's being played in Perth, not at the Border-Gavaskar, but at the Optus Stadium, although we're told that it's going to be hard, fast, bouncy, even though they've had unseasonal rains. Early in the week, it's been dry for the last couple of days. But again, there's so much that you could look into. The quality of the Australian bowling, the experience of their bowlers. It's been the same bowling attack, almost unchanged for the last couple of years. And they've been virtually unchallenged in Australia in many respects. So when you look at that and you look at the reputation of India, even without their name players in some cases, you'd have to say that it starts marginally in favour of Australia as I see it, but I wouldn't be surprised with the new, relatively new faces for India coming into the lineup really show their worth and stake a permanent claim in the Indian side.
Yeah, and speaking about the new incoming faces when it comes to India, Abhimanyu Easwaran, Faz, based on what you know about him, what are your thoughts on him opening the batting?
Well, based on what is being said, or what we're following from the series so far, it may not be Abhimanyu Easwaran. It could be KL Rahul, because looking at the probable lineups that are being discussed among the Indian media, especially, they're including Jaiswal together with KL Rahul to open. Devdutt Padikkal, relatively untried at number 3. Virat Kohli, everyone knows about him. Rishabh Pant, Dhruv Jurel was the name that I just mentioned. And there's also the talk about Nitish Kumar Reddy or Harshit Rana also fitting in the lower order. So yes, as well as Easwaran would have the numbers to support him, a lot will depend on the conditions, how they've shaped up in the nets, what are the feelings about them taking on the new ball in Perth. And of course, for Australia, let's not forget, they have a relatively untried player as well in Nathan McSweeney.
Yes.
And that's why I mentioned yesterday that a lot of the established openers in Australian domestic cricket feel that they're being cast aside, while once again, the Australian selectors try to experiment once more.
Yeah, he is a player I'm looking forward to see because, you know, a lot of talks about, well, the Steve Smith experiment is no longer happening again and they're going to try with this youngster. So looking forward to see that. What about Jasprit Bumrah as the captain of this India setup? We knew that Virat Kohli was not going to take it. So Jasprit Bumrah getting that leadership role. Your thoughts on him, Faz, in that role in particular?
Yeah, I get the impression that Bumrah revels in this sort of atmosphere because when you follow his life story, and it's a story of real humble beginnings, single parent home, and the challenges and the sacrifices that were made by others to get him into the game and give him the opportunities, which probably would not have happened 40 years ago prior to a Kapil Dev, who really opened the doors for much of India, which had been ignored and cast aside unless you were from from Mumbai or Delhi or Chennai, from the right family, the right upbringing. You probably didn't get a look in. But Jasprit Bumrah has changed the face of what we consider to be traditional fast bowling with that unusual run-up, that raw pace, and his confidence, his cheeky smiles, which also show almost, I wouldn't say arrogance, but it's almost as if he knows what he can do and can unleash it at any time. And therefore, being captain, I suspect that it will allow him to focus even more and not take away from his game, because having gone through what he's gone through in life, I believe that he will see this as another step up in his achievement as a cricketer, not just for himself, but for his family and his community.
Yeah, about the fact that is being looked at, Faz, with some of the Indian newcomers having their first trip to Australia, how much of a challenge would this be for them? Because history has recorded that, you know, new players to Test cricket have gone to Australia for the first time and done well. Adrian Barth had 100 as a 19-year-old Trini. I think Marlon Samuels, his first trip was to Australia. He was just 19, had an unbeaten half-century there as well. So is it that maybe the conditions in Australia may not be as intimidating for a rookie as maybe a trip to another part of the world?
I suppose it depends on the individual, Lance, because sometimes you could be so green, so new, that you really haven't taken in all that is being said about playing in Australia. The pitches, the crowds, the hostility, the pace, the bounce, and all of that. I remember Marlon Samuels, as you referenced, arriving in Australia, in Adelaide, mere hours before he took the field because Shivnarine Chanderpaul was ruled out. And he looked as if he belonged. And again, that speaks to the character. Okay. Adrian Barrett, a different type of character, but he was ready to take on the bowlers. So again, it depends on the individuals. They could be overawed, they could be easily roughed up. There's going to be a lot being said to them and about them on the field, off the field, and likewise. And it's really about them channeling their energies in the right direction. It's not going to be easy. But then again, as you pointed out, there are some who would have wilted under the challenge, others who would have really gone on by leaps and bounds. I mean, Sir Garfield Sobers, one of the absolute greats of all time, his first test innings was 123 at Brisbane. And Rohan Kanhai, twin hundreds in Adelaide in that same series of 60-61. So if you're a quality player, you eventually are going to succeed, or maybe succeed earlier than people expect in a place like Australia.
Yeah, and sometime earlier on today, Ricardo was highlighting the fact that Australia's recent series record against the Indians very, very poor. They haven't won a series against the Aussies since, I think, 2015. So, I mean, the Aussies against India since 2015. So despite the Aussies' lofty status as a test cricketing nation, India have given them real problems in the past decade.
And I think that's what India enjoy. The fact that not only are they the powerhouses in world cricket economically, but they go to a place like Australia and they've won the last two series. Remember, that was the sort of thing only done by the West Indies from that period 79-80 until 1992-93. The West Indies were unbeaten in test series in Australia. People would fill the grounds to see Australia being beaten by arguably the greatest force in the cricketing world. So now you have India, who within their own right are staking that claim across all formats. They would certainly go, even with relatively untried players, to say, look, yes, it might be new, yes, it might be daunting, yes, it might be challenging, but the last time Australia beat us in a test series, you were in short pants in primary school. So don't beat up about it. Take it as a positive.
Yeah, I get the impression, Ricardo, that Faz won't be sleeping tonight.
Well, I tell you what, all of us will not be getting a lot of sleep in the coming nights. Well, maybe not Lance. Lance has some other things that he needs to take care of. But Faz, as usual, thank you very much. We look forward to what we're 5 hours and 25 minutes away now from the start of this test series, and we're really looking forward to it. So we'll be chatting a lot over the course of the next many weeks.
Indeed. Looking forward to it. Take care.
All right. Yeah. Let's take a break on the SportsMax Zone. So much more to come.